And hi, everyone. Hi, everybody on Zoom. I'm going to turn around because I can see you that way too. So is there anybody new to meditation? You guys want to? No? Everybody's been doing this for a minute. Okay, great. So I'm happy to be here. It's a delight. And I live in LA and I drove out a little bit early and had lunch with a friend of mine. And so I just came over. So I just want to take a couple of seconds to breathe and arrive, and I'm happy to be here with you. And what we'll do, our format, I think most of you know, or is there anybody here for the first time? No, you're all been around. Okay, great. So we'll have about a 40-minute meditation, and then we'll have a chance for Q&A around that, and then I'll have a talk, and then we'll have some more Q&A and conversation. So let's sit. Find yourself, find your posture. I think what's really helpful when we practice is the intention in moving in to bring an intention of kindness, an intention to be gentle with ourselves. We tend to tighten without even realizing it against whatever may be approaching that we are not fond of. We intense or tighten. And the invitation with this practice is to begin to relax, to soften. So take some time to allow the body to soften around the face, the shoulders, relaxing the arms, the hands, letting them rest on your lap, your legs. Relaxing the belly, the torso, softening the legs and the feet. Let yourself be here, being supported. Becoming familiar with the sensations that are here. Perhaps you're aware of the temperature, the coolness, the warmth. Aware of the clothing against your skin, the foot resting against the floor. Open to the experience that's right here. The body as it breathes, the movement with the inhale and the exhale. Breathing in and breathing out. There's nothing for you to control. There's simply this natural occurrence, this natural rhythm. Also noticing any sensations in the body, any of the energies, the pulsing, the tingling. This practice period is a time we get to notice those things that may always be present, but we're often unaware of because we're so distracted by our thoughts, distracted by the stories of the mind. Also aware of the state of the mind, the emotions that may be present, the feelings that are here. Acknowledging what it's like right now, and also recognizing that there's nothing that needs to be fixed or changed. It's simply resting in awareness of what's here, this moment. And you may find that the mind is still active, that it's easy to become distracted by thoughts, by plans, the future, the past. And the practice is simply when you recognize you've drifted away, release the thought and gently open back into awareness of right now. You're still here. It's simply the mind that's drifted to thinking. Releasing the thoughts and turning towards an awareness of breath, the body, whatever else is present, with a gentleness and a kindness throughout the practice. Even with a restless mind, you can find a place of ease if you allow yourself to drop below the stories, the restlessness, and settle again in the present, even if it's only for a breath or two. Allowing yourself to be right here, breathing in and breathing out, supported by your seat. As you sit, you may also notice the impermanence of the sensations, the passing thoughts, the other sensations, the sounds, the smells, the different energies moving in the body. The inhale comes to an end, and then there's an exhale, coming and going. There's nowhere else to be but right here. Yet those stories of the mind, the habits are so powerful, the distractions so strong, so easily to slip off. But we practice, we return, we recognize those stories, begin to release them before they grab hold, and open to the experience of sitting and breathing and being. What's right here, right now? Remembering the intention to be friendly and gentle. It's so easy to fall into annoyance, even anger when something is challenging or difficult. Just recognizing that right now it's like this, perhaps pleasant, perhaps unpleasant. but knowing it will change at some point. Can you be with it right now? Relaxing the body and relaxing the mind. It's so easy to become constricted or tight, even during meditation, as a reaction to difficult sensations or feelings. Let yourself relax and open into gentle awareness, the experience of this breath, this moment. Where are you right now? There's nowhere else to be but right here. Let yourself be where you are. We are moving now into the last few moments of our sit this afternoon. And the invitation, if you like, is to move into a simple gratitude practice, reflecting on something in your life you're grateful for, something easy to connect with. Bring it to your heart, bring it to your mind, and spend the next few moments resting in this gratitude. Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions or comments about the instructions, about your experience? Okay. I hope you were all at least able to be gentle with yourselves. So easy, even with that intention, to get into you should be doing it differently. So, anyway. Oh, okay, well then I'll jump into my talk. I want to talk about impermanence. It's a very, I think it's a very common topic. It's a very important topic, and it's one of the three characteristics that the Buddha talked about, the three characteristics of existence. There is, I tend to use the Pali words for these, although sometimes anicca, which is impermanent, that all things are impermanent, all conditioned things are impermanent and will pass, and anatta, this idea that we don't have a fixed self. There's no internal Mary that is solid and unchanging. Because which one would it be? Would it be my 3-year-old Mary, or my 12-year-old Mary, or my 45-year-old Mary? Which one would it be? We're conditioned beings, conditioned by our experiences, and constantly changing, because our experiences, our life experiences are constantly changing. And then the third characteristic of existence is dukkha, that the nature of this impermanence brings, there's an unsatisfactoriness to our existence. There's birth, there's death, there's old age, there's sickness. We're separated from things we love, and there's a discomfort there, an unsatisfactoriness if we try and plant um, ourselves on a particular thing, hoping that if we get something we want or land somewhere we want, that we will live happily ever after. And with things that are constantly changing and conditioned, that's impossible. So there's that inherent dukkha, which is often translated as suffering. So these are characteristics that the Buddha said we really need to pay attention to. And there's a quote I want to offer from Nyanaponika Thera, who was a Sri Lankan monk in the last century. It always cracks me up to say in the last century. But he lived, then. And he said, to see things as they really are means seeing them consistently in the light of the three characteristics. That's impermanence, no fixed self, and dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. It's important that to see things as they really are means seeing them consistently in the light of these characteristics. Ignorance of these three, or self-deception about them, is by itself a potent cause for suffering, by knitting, as it were, the net of false hopes, of unrealistic and harmful desires, of false ideologies, false values, and aims of life in which man is caught. Ignoring or distorting these three basic facts can only lead to frustration, disappointment, and despair. And I can see it, and we see it all around, people denying impermanence and denying this idea of suffering, and thinking that if we just do it right, it won't hurt, and we'll get it, we'll land, we'll get to where we need to be, and then. I mean, I still do that to a certain extent, and I've been practicing this stuff for a number of years, and I still think, when this deadline is passed, then. And it's like, no, then the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. And the reason impermanence is in my mind, this has been in my mind this week, is I got to thinking about it because I took a trip earlier this week. I went Monday and came back Wednesday. I went to Kansas City. And the reason I went to Kansas City is I had planned this trip for a while. I had a lot of stuff going on earlier in the summer. I had some deadlines for the end of June that were ginormous, and they were really taking a lot of my time, and it was a lot of work. And finally the end of June came, but planning ahead, I said, you know what, I want to take some time. I want to go away. I just want to have a couple of days to just relax and not do anything. And Kansas City came up for me a couple of reasons. One, there is a statue of Guan Yin, and some of you are familiar with Guan Yin. Guan Yin is a bodhisattva and often considered to be the embodiment of compassion. And there's a particular statue that I love, and I bought a picture of it. Some of you can see that it's a fairly famous, I don't know if you can see it online. No, maybe yes, maybe no. There. Anyway, it's a fairly famous statue. And this statue is in a museum in Kansas City. And I even have this image tattooed on my leg because I've had this for years. And so I really love this statue. And I went, you know what, maybe I can go to Kansas City. The other reason is I love baseball. And I heard a couple of years ago about the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, which is in Kansas City as well. And about 6 or 7 months ago, I started listening to a podcast, Black Diamonds, which is about the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the Negro Leagues. And I'm just so taken by it. And they're in Kansas City. And then I liked their baseball team, and I looked it up, and I'm an Angels fan. They're a Southern California team, and they happen to be playing in Kansas City this week. So I went, okay, I'm from New York City. I live in Los Angeles. I don't know anything about the middle of the country, so I just said I'm going to Kansas City, and I went. And I got there, and I went from the airport to the museum, the Nelson Atkins Museum, which is this astonishing museum in Kansas City. And the statue is in a room that's really beautiful. They've set it up like a Chinese temple. The statue is like maybe 1,100 years old. It's about 6, 7 feet tall, and they set it up in a replica of a temple with a few other pieces, and it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful, and I got to sit there for a while and just be, and then it was kind of time to go. And I got up and I was like, okay, my time here is done. There's nothing else to do. And I actually even kind of mentally poked myself, because I have historically had that tendency to have this oh my God, I'm leaving. Will I ever be here again? That angst around the ending of things that I find to be meaningful. And it wasn't there, and I got up and I left, and I went to the ball game that night, and the next day I went to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, which was just wonderful. It's really, really, really wonderful. I enjoyed it. And again, I took my time. I went through the museum, and then I was done, and then it was like, okay, it's time to leave. And again, this experience that I had been looking forward to is ending, and it's time to go. And I was able to just get up and go to another ball game, and then the next morning get up, get on a plane, and fly home. And it was it. And I had a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I was sitting, I think it was Thursday or Friday morning, and I had this great sense of fullness, this really sense of fullness of having had this experience. And it is in such a sharp contrast for me, because as I mentioned, historically, or a long time ago, I would really fight against things ending, especially things that were important. I remember going camping and being, it was a beautiful place, and the night before we were leaving, I would be there, and I'd be like, will I ever be here again? Oh, it's like, it's gut wrenching, so painful to acknowledge impermanence. And I remember when I was a kid looking forward to going to an amusement park on the weekend. And I looked forward to it all week long. And then we got to the amusement park on Saturday, and all I could do was think about how 5 hours from now we're going home. 4 hours from now we're going home. And I missed the entire experience because I was so hung up in the impermanence of it. I didn't know that's what it was. Wouldn't say the word impermanence. Obviously, I wouldn't say the word anicca. But I was just, it was so, endings were so painful. Endings were so painful. And I did everything I could to avoid them. I did everything I could to avoid them. And it was what was really apparent to me, and that's, I think, the real importance of the Buddhist teaching, is that everything passes. Absolutely everything passes. And we get caught up in this not being able for things, not wanting things to pass, especially if they're pleasant. We get caught up in, what do I have to do? How can I extend this? I'd be the person to extend things long past the time they should have ended. Things that relationships are dead, and I keep trying to smack them around and wake them up. Come on, we can keep doing this. And it's like, no, let go, let go, let go. But it's so hard to let go. It's so hard to let go when things are pleasant and they're ending. But when the flip side is also true, because impermanence works when things are unpleasant, when things are difficult. We get to recognize, it's like, okay, this is going to end. How can I be with it right now without going through the gyrations of needing to fix it, making it end now? How do I make these feelings stop? Instead, recognizing, right now it's like this. All things will pass. Can I just be with the way it is? And I know a lot of times when I'm in those really challenging places, like when I was in the end of June with these deadlines looming, it was like really stressful, and so much was going on, and I was, instead of being, it wasn't trying to get out of it. I was just, you know what, this is going to end. The hours will pass by, the minutes will pass by, the days will pass by, and I'll be on the other side of it. So to recognize, even when it's uncomfortable, it will pass. I used to be the person who said, if it's really crappy right now, it's always going to be this way. I could never see a way out. I always had that sense of doom. It's always going to be this way. And the pleasant's going to end. It just, my outlook was just not always the best. It was like, oh, it's not going to be good. But things change. And when we hold so tightly, that's when we suffer. You know, I came away from a retreat years ago with the one sentence: to cling is to suffer. When we hold on to things and deny impermanence, as Nyopanika Thera said, there's frustration, disappointment, and despair. But instead, if we can just sit back and be and allow the flow to happen, it's just gonna flow without grasping, without clinging, and recognizing the conditionality of it all. All things have to change. Things change all the time. Things come and things go. And I was thinking about this, conditionality. I'm only here because my parents met. I'm only here because my ancestors got onto boats and left the countries of origin and landed in a place because it was so unbearable there. I mean, that's the teaching of conditionality. Because of this arises. Because of this arises. And if we hold on tightly, then things don't change. I was reading something from Thich Nhat Hanh the other day. In fact, I get emails from Lion's Roar. I'm sure you're all familiar with Lion's Roar. It's one of the two main Buddhist publications in the States, or in the West, or in English. And the email this week was about these three characteristics, and I was reading what Thich Nhat Hanh was writing about impermanence, and he said it's important for impermanence, because if impermanence didn't exist, seeds would never grow into plants. Nothing would change. We wouldn't grow up from children into adults. We would just be fossilized, petrified. We would just be stuck in these places. And people who don't change, I would hope I would change. I've changed since I was 12. Oh, please let me have changed since I was 12 or 20, because I was, yeah, I'm sure you get it. So, but we hold on so tightly and we suffer. And that's really, some of the teaching of the second arrow. And if you know the story of the second arrow, there's the discomfort of the moment. It's like, suppose there's a pain, I hit my elbow. And there's that discomfort of the pain in my elbow from hitting it on the dresser or on the table. But then I get into the place of, who put that there? Why is that happening? How can I be so stupid? We take the difficulty of the experience itself, the present moment, and then add all these judgments and the emotions, the anger on top of it, instead of just allowing it to be the way it is. It's unpleasant, it will pass. It's pleasant, it will pass. Everything will come, everything will go in its own time. Everything changes. I have a friend who's an entertainer, and she sings a song before each of her shows, and the song is called Change. The lyrics are, change makes us so unhappy, but we've got to change to be happy. I mean, it makes us unhappy, but if we don't change, we stay unhappy. It's we have this subtle desire to keep things as they are. It may not even be conscious, but we want to just live in that place that was happy, or recreate the past when things were good, or in our minds things were good. And we get into this place of longing, of being stuck. And I was thinking about, a lot of times nostalgia tends to have that kind of a flavor when we think about the past. and get into the if only or what if, why did that have to end? Those types of things. And it can be really painful. It can be really painful. But the one of the good things about the teaching of mindfulness is that we recognize that things change. We recognize that nothing stays the same. And we become willing to sit with it. One of my other favorite phrases is, right now it's like this. It's like when I was in my trip this weekend, this last week, it was so apparent. It's like, this is coming to an end. It was like a visceral experience. It's like, okay, this is ending, and it's time for it to change. Time movement is happening. This is ending, moving on to the next thing. It's, what is it? Thich Nhat Hanh had a sentence. He said, the insight of impermanence helps us to go beyond all concepts. We're not stuck on ideas of shoulds and woulds and musts and have-tos. We can go beyond that. And he talks about the idea of the river. And a river, if we go swimming in a river one day, the water is different one day to the next day. The river is the same, but the water is different. I mean, it's this concept that it's changing yet remaining the same, but we can go beyond that. We're not stuck on the river. We're not stuck on the water. We're just recognizing that we have to be with things as they are. I mean, I'm going to go home to my house. I don't think my house will disappear while I'm here, and that's the same, but things change. Sometimes things change quickly, like the water in the river, and sometimes things change more slowly, like the river itself. But it's all impermanent, and we don't have to get so stuck on things. Some things change in geologic time. I mean, tectonic plates moving. And now with the Webb telescope, all the imagery we're seeing of all these things that may not exist anymore. You know, the stars that have burned out thousands and thousands of years ago, but the light is just reaching us now. And so to have this grander picture of things, and it's just like, especially with things that are causing a lot of harm in our world. Sometimes we want things to change right now, but they don't necessarily change overnight. It takes a lot of work. And I found these other page of notes, these quotes from some other class I was teaching a bit ago, and they're changes, but they're about change and impermanence. And there's a quote from the Reverend Jim Lawson, who was one of the icons of the civil rights era, and talking about the systems we have, the systems of oppression that are existent in our country today. And he said, a system that is established over 300 or 400 years is not going to be dismantled in a few decades. It takes a steady stream of work. And so impermanence, everything is impermanent. It will change, and we have to also let go of our expectations about change. And trust it's going to happen. Things that we may not want to change are going to change sooner than we want them to change. And things that we want to change soon may take a while to change. Just recognizing that's true. John Lewis, there's a quote from John Lewis who says, ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. It's not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes, and each one of us in every generation must do our part. So that's talking about change and impermanence on a different level, in a different realm, but some change is quick, some change takes forever, but everything changes. Everything is impermanent. If you think about the teaching of the 5 remembrances, we all are of the nature to grow old, get sick, and die. All of us. None of us get out of here alive. As much as people have really tried, cryogenics, the fountain of youth, all these products that people will happily sell you to keep you from aging, there's no way around it. There is no way around it. And we're all going to die, and everything we love will be taken from us, and all we have are our actions right in this moment. That's all we have. That's all we have. And so to become comfortable with that idea really lifts a lot of tension off, where we're constantly in struggle of gotta save this or gotta change that or gotta not let that change, gotta keep this, that constant tension that can be there or may be there if we're not comfortable with these ideas of impermanence and conditionality. It's really important to become comfortable with those. But as human beings, I think we're hardwired to want certainty, and groundlessness is challenging. But there is no guarantee. Everything changes, everything is groundless. And as much as we can become comfortable with it, it's really helpful and really important. And it always makes me think about the teaching of the 8 worldly winds, which you're probably familiar with, which I love. It's a teaching about equanimity, but it's a teaching about impermanence, where everything changes. There's pleasure and there's pain. There's pain and there's pleasure and pain, gain and loss, fame and ill repute. And I always forget it, but anyway, pleasure becomes pain, gain becomes loss, praise and blame. That's the one I forgot, praise and blame. They come and they go, they come and they go. And they happen all the time. And the Buddha says that the noble disciple, the noble disciple is the one who is practicing and studying, understands that pleasant will change, that gains will change, and that happiness will change to unhappiness. Because he understands this, he'll not suffer that second arrow. If we don't understand the fundamental nature of experience, we'll continue to be uncomfortable and continue to be caught in delusion. It doesn't mean there's no joy, it doesn't mean there's no sadness, but we have to recognize that everything comes and everything goes. Everything comes and everything goes. And how do you cope with that? And there's a we were talking about this the other day. I was talking to some people about it, and somebody was talking about mourning, and when something that's near to us, let's say we lose someone we care about deeply, or I had one of my dearest friends lost her dog, passed away very suddenly earlier this week. Took her by surprise, and there's a thing called spiritual bypass, where we use the teachings as a baseball bat. I would say a baseball bat, and we hit ourselves over the head with them, or we hit our emotions over the head and go, oh, everything's impermanent. Oh well, got to move on. That's delusion. That's denial of feelings, because if feelings are unpleasant, we often don't want to feel them, or we've been taught not to feel them. A lot of it is based on our upbringing, our conditioning. How are we taught to deal with grief? How are we taught to deal with anger and mourning? And so I was talking to this guy, and he said, he lost someone, and how does he hold that? And it's like we tend to the mourning. We tend to the emotions. We don't just say, oh well, everything passes. Can't waste my time having feelings about it. It's like, no, we're still human beings. It's part of the human condition to tend to those feelings that are there. We don't spiritually bypass anything. We're fully with whatever shows up. If sadness shows up, we greet the sadness. If happiness shows up, we greet the happiness. We greet whatever is here with kindness, with compassion, with tenderness. It's so important. That's part of fully being present and recognizing that things will change. There's a man, William Bridges, I think he passed away a few years ago, and he wrote a book back in like 1980 called Transitions. And it's about things ending and things beginning. And I think especially in this country, once something ends, we want to immediately get on to the next thing and bypass that experience of the ending. And he says we have to recognize that things end, but there's this time of transition that we have to work with, that we have to recognize is still there, because endings can be uncomfortable. They can be challenging. It can be icky to have things end. And we want to get on with it, get on with it, get on with it, so we don't have to feel. He said we have to feel. We have to be with. He wrote another book called The Way of Transition. They're both really excellent. And I remember one example he gave in the first book. He talked about a woman who was pregnant, and she was really excited about having this child. She and her partner were really excited. And the child was born and healthy, everything was well, but she had this sadness, and she didn't recognize that even though she was really looking forward to this particular thing, this birth of a child, that the life she knew had ended. The life of a childless person had ended, and she had to grieve that, and she had to acknowledge that change. Oh, this is ending. Let me acknowledge that. So we have to be really careful. We have to tend to the impermanence as well. Instead of just saying, yeah, everything changes, we have to recognize how it works inside of us, how we hold it, how it shows up for us. Because I've seen this a few places. I think Thich Nhat Hanh said it, and I saw it somewhere else. When we can have this clarity and wisdom around impermanence, around conditionality, we can open up to the arising of compassion and kindness. Because what it does is we, as these teachings tend to do, move us into this place of empathy, move us into this place of recognition of our interconnectedness, that we're all experiencing the human condition, every one of us. So we have compassion for ourselves, and we have compassion for others in their losses, in the impermanence that they're experiencing. There's a sweetness to this practice that arises even in the midst of sadness and endings. I taught a class a few weeks ago on connection and how important connection is. So all these practices, when we're open to the fullness of our humanity, is a way for us to connect with each other, a way for us to recognize our shared experiences. So important, because we're so easily siloed, and it's so easy to other people, that when we can find that place of connection, it's really important. It's really a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place to be. And change is impartial. I think I mentioned it before, but it's like, it's not if you're on your best behavior and you do everything right, then it won't happen. Although we sometimes are told that. We, as I mentioned before, we live in a society that tells us if it's unpleasant or it doesn't work out, it's probably because you did something wrong and you didn't do it right, and it's your fault. And that's not true. It happens. It happens. It's everything ends, and there's always a new beginning. So again, that 5 remembrances, we're all going to get sick, grow old, and die. Everything we have will be taken from us. Boy, this is sounding morbid and somber, isn't it? But also the shitty stuff ends. Let me throw that back, and let me just remind you that that happens too. So the crappy stuff ends. But actually, the more comfortable you can be with that recognition that everything ends, that we all die, there's a tremendous freedom there. There's a tremendous freedom there, because we're no longer so caught up in avoidance. we're willing to be more present with ourselves. We're willing to be more present with the people we're with. I did the practice of a year to live, where you spend a year living as though it were your last. And you start to shift your perspective of the world. You start to shift your perspective of the people you're with. If I was going to die tomorrow or next week or next year, would I be doing this with my life right now? Yes or no? What am I going to cut out? Everything ends. I think it's Jack Kornfield said this. The myth is we think we have time. We don't have time. I mean, we may have time. I may live another 50 or 60 years. I might die on my way home today. When I'm coming out here, there was a hell of a storm. Driving through some really blinding rain, and I'm like, I could skid off the road and die. I don't get morbid about it, but I go, that could happen. My girlfriend has the keys. She can take care of the cats. Okay, I got that taken care of. But how are we taking care of ourselves? But there's a freedom. I'm not walking around in fear. It's almost counterintuitive when we can really greet and recognize these characteristics. There's a tremendous freedom. And so that's what I want to offer you, this promise of this great freedom that is available when you can really meet the idea of impermanence. Not in a flippant bypass way, but just with a deep understanding. And it's kind of like that was a really profound experience that I had this week in the museums. It's like, this is something I had been looking forward to for such a long time, with great happiness and excitement. And it had come, and I was fully present for the experience. I was in the experiences, absolutely present. And then it came to the end, and it was time to go. And I left with a fullness and a joy. And that is such a far place from where I used to be and where so many people are. So my invitation to you is to become familiar with impermanence, to begin to welcome it, begin to recognize where perhaps you get caught up in pushing it away or denying it. It's, or where you get stuck. I always ask the question, what gets in the way of your comfort with this stuff, with these teachings? Let's see if there's anything that I need to say that if I don't say, I will regret all the way home. Oh, okay, two last things. One is the very, very, very famous story of Ajahn Chah and his teacup, which you probably all have heard countless times, that he was living in the monastery in his temple, and he was using the same teacup, and his monk said, Bhante, we notice you're really drinking that one out of that one cup. You seem to have a little bit of attachment to it. And he said, to me, this cup is already broken. He understood impermanence. Everything will be gone, but I will enjoy it while it's here. I will be fully present with the experience while it's here. And then the other thing I want to say, how we do that, is a great teaching from Bhikkhu Analayo that I heard from him in a retreat last year, where he said the sum of the Buddhist teachings can be put into 5 letters. LETGO. Just let go. And when you're not holding on so tightly and something passes, great. It was time. It was time. And now, the end of the talk has come, because everything ends. So thank you, my friends, for your kind attention. And are there any? And unfortunately, we're out of time. I always think I'm never going to have enough to say, and there you go. I blather on. So thank you, my friends, for being here. Next next week is August, and if you've seen the emails or look on the website, starting in August, each Sunday each teacher is going to talk about working with difficult emotions. And if you look at the website, I think it lists each week what we're going to talk about. So that's really, I think, can be really helpful. So make sure you come for those classes, either in person or online. And then also next Saturday is an intro to meditation class is starting online. Oh, it's going to be a once a month. It's like if you're new to meditation or want a refresher, it's 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and that's just Zoom. So tell your friends who might be new to meditation that's online. And thank you again for being here. ICD is hopefully a refuge and a home for you. And if you're interested in volunteering or interested in offering being a part of, you can talk to me, you can talk to Adrian, you can go online, you can write us a note. Again, there's a couple of baskets over there for Donna to support the teacher, to support the organization. And thank you, my friends. I'll be back, I think, the third week in August. And otherwise, remembering that we practice not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next time.